Short, oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have the history of it? Do you guys, I don't know, on the book, do you guys have the history as to what Occupy movement came about? As in like what Europe, what country came from and whatnot?
Well, it's not an academic book about the Occupy movement. It's basically it's an anthology that's a collection of stories that are inspired by the movement and the issues that are driving the movement. So in the first issue, there's one piece that's a history of nonviolence, and that goes back a few hundred years, talking about nonviolent protest movements. There's another piece that goes into the specifics of politicians and bankers who would be part of the 1% or the 0.1%, but actually doing biographies on each one and explaining why they are sort of being targeted. But then there's other things where J.M. DeMatteis did a piece, basically just his perception of the movement when he went down there and visited it. So it's not intended to be a biography of the movement. It's more about a time capsule of different people's perspectives on the movement as it was occurring.
Yeah, and what I think was interesting about when you sent out an email and asked people to contribute, you sort of left it open for everyone. And I think that's the cool thing about the Occupy movement is that it is very personal. And I mean, it's interesting to hear stories because I can tell they're very personal and it's important to you about how it feels and how, that everything about it is very personal. And I think people take different things from the movement itself. And that was kind of what you offered up to us. You said, write what is important to you, write what you want to write about and what you think the movement is really about and the issues that are important to you. And that's the beauty of an anthology.
I think was anyone else specifically going into the history of the movement in any way, or to address that question?
Or were you like influenced by Greece or anything that was happening back then? Egypt. Sorry,
Right,
Egypt. I don't know where
it doesn't really directly go into that in the current issue that's out. It doesn't tie directly into that. I mean, there's references to the similarities between the movements. But while there are structural similarities and a lot of affinity between them, thus far, and not all the submissions are in, I haven't seen something that goes directly into Egypt and the Arab Spring and all that.
Can I just say, one of the things that really concerns me about what the Occupy movement has sort of like revealed to me is that it's like this thing about the 99%, which is us, against the government and the banks, which are the 1%, which have just basically tied up all the power. That we are always trying to fit into. I'm very concerned about how many people really feel that they can do anything. I had a couple over the last few months. We're in the middle of a banking scandal now where it's been revealed that the major banks in England, obviously banking is global now, so they've been doing it across the world, have been fixing the interest rates in which they can lend money to each other. This is a major scandal. It's basically fraud on a massive scale. None of these bankers are going to go to jail. Nobody. Anybody that actually steals money from a bank, if you're an ordinary guy, you're going to go to jail real quick. The banks can seemingly do anything they like, and nobody goes to jail. And they maybe lose a few million from their bonuses. I mean, the head of RBS in England is taking less of a bonus, because it's very good for public relations. But in any other circumstance, he would be going home with the bonus of millions, and he's decided he's going to take less because he's, from a public relations point of view, it's bad. But that's it. That's the only penalty. They end up with less millions. And I mean, what power do we think we have? And it's in America. I mean, I'm a soapbox here. I'm sorry. In America, you know, the Republicans and the Democrats have got everything sewn up. You know, there's just power broken between the two. When I was in San Diego last year, there was a big battle about the budget, the government budget, and nobody was moving. The Republicans and the Democrats were sort of like having a big battle. Nobody was moving. The public was suffering. Nobody to really champion the public. And the great thing about the Occupy movement, and I don't know how it's going to get the power, this is what I'm interested in. How does the Occupy movement, which is a real movement of the ordinary common people, can you get together and form some really strong, influential body that will somehow do something about all the lobbying power of the big corporations and the banks that just control everything? Anybody got any ideas about that? I mean, this is a very interesting subject for me.
I think we just stop buying their shit. You know, I see people walking around with 32 ounces of Coca-Cola thinking they're trendy with their pink dreadlocks and thinking, you know, I mean, why do you have to do that? You know,
that's bad, you know,
but it achieves nothing.
No,
you know?
you're
They're like part of the
now.
machine, you know, just like, don't buy their shit anymore, you know? Don't go to Walmart, you know? There was a time when Walmart used to have American flags everywhere. They can't do that anymore because none of that shit is ours. You know, the Chinese can't make stuff because we can't afford to buy it. And they know it. And they're suffering now, you know? So I just think, I don't want part of it, you know?
And did you also have your hand up?
I was going to say that direct action is kind of a different thing from what's really been going on. A lot of it's just about, you know, gathering and sharing the information we have, which is what's caused the solidarity of the movement by itself. But direct action is something that's so hard to achieve in such a large group of people against such a large opponent. And comics is going to be a great way to go about it. Just telling a story can really, you know, invoke emotions in people, and there's nothing better than pictures and stories together to do that. So, over here.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like kind of the direct action, and I think what Zoetica said about information is really powerful. And one of the things I read kind of from one of my political science classes is that there was a big corporations talking in amongst themselves and saying, you know, about this 1%, 99%. And they said that the one thing that stopped or let them continue was the fact that we don't know the information. We don't know what's going on. I think that's kind of what we need to push, is just telling people like what, and kind of making sure people aren't apathetic and actually get involved with politics. And there's a lot of people who are so depressed with it and they don't vote, they don't run. That's really, I mean, you can't just destroy capitalism. I mean, we could try, but basically you just have to get involved. And I think that's like one power we really need to work on.
Yeah, but it's not about capitalism. That's one of the things that when the Occupy movement was described in England, they used a very simple way of describing the Occupy. So they said they were anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
Well, they're not anti-capitalist.
They're anti-greed.
Yeah, they're anti-tyranny. They're not anti-capitalist. I mean, we're all capitalists. I mean, we all have credit cards. We don't mind banks that run things well and that look after our money and don't rip us off. That's fine. You know, we're not anti-capital. The Occupy movement is not anti-capitalist at all. We are just,